The sun scorched the wasteland, relentless, until even the shadows pleaded for relief. She fled barefoot, her breath ragged, tearing through her lungs like flames. Sand stuck to her face, blood marked her shins where thorns had slashed her skin. Behind her, the thunder of hooves, it grew louder, nearer. A gunshot shattered the quiet, and a hoarse cry, sharp, desperate, tore from her lips. She didn't glance back. She couldn't. Her name was Elena Morales, and for the past 2 days she'd been escaping men who wore stars but carried no hearts. The earth swayed as she tripped over a gnarled root. Her knees slammed into the dirt, her palms torn by jagged stones. Every breath, it tasted like iron. Every step felt stolen from death itself. The horizon shimmered with heat until, there, she spotted it. A homestead, split-rail fences, a weathered bench, half collapsed beside a crumbling shed. No souls, no lawmen, just stillness and the hum of insects. She dragged herself onward, one trembling hand after another, crawling through the grit. Her vision faded, her lips split, her stomach growled louder than her voice. When she reached the shade of that broken bench, her body, it just surrendered. She tried to rise, but her strength, it abandoned her. Her fingers clutched a splintered edge of wood, gripping it like it was the last real thing in her world. For a moment she wondered, would dying here be calmer than running? Then she heard the boots. Slow, deliberate steps, not rushing, not calling out, just approaching. Her eyes lifted, and she saw him, a man standing a few paces away. Broad frame, sun-reddened skin, a face etched by time and solitude. In his hand, a hatchet, still damp from labor. He didn't look like a lawman, but he carried a different kind of danger, the kind of man who'd buried more than one truth out here. He took a step closer. She tried to inch back, but her body refused. Her pulse roared in her ears. As he knelt, extended a hand toward her shoulder. Fear, it burst from her chest. Her voice cracked, half whisper, half plea. Be kind, it's too much. The words lingered in the heat, quivering between them. The man paused, his hand hovering. His eyes studied her face, as if searching for the wound that made her fear compassion. The breeze carried the scent of sweat, earth, and something faintly human. Sympathy, perhaps, or maybe sorrow. He lowered his hand and spoke, slowly, his voice thick with an accent roughened by isolation. You're hurt. It wasn't a question. She flinched anyway, as if his words touched her. He stood, walked to the shed, returned with a flask, and placed it on the ground beside her. Then he turned away. No questions, no demands, only space. Elena stared at the water until her reflection blurred. Could she trust a stranger who didn't ask her story, who expected nothing in return? The wasteland had never offered her anything without claiming double in return. Her fingers shook as she reached for the flask. The metal was warm from the sun, but it felt like Grace. From behind the shed she heard the faint neigh of a horse, the creak of a wooden gate. The man was still there, watching her perhaps, or protecting her. She didn't know which scared her more. Her voice broke again, softer now, lost in the wind. "Who are you? And why didn't you leave when you saw me?" When Elena opened her eyes again, the sun had softened. The shed smelled of straw and aged timber. For the first time in days, no one was pursuing her. But peace, it felt like another kind of snare. She sat up quickly, her body aching in every muscle. The flask still lay beside her, half empty. He hadn't taken it back. She looked around and saw him near the fence, tying a knot in a rope. Every motion was slow, steady, like a man who'd stopped hurrying long ago. He noticed her gaze and gave a small nod. Nothing more. No smile, no threat. Just a quiet respect that puzzled her more than fear ever could. Her stomach rumbled, so loudly it startled the horse. She didn't know whether to laugh or weep. She chose neither. He walked back to the shed and handed her a chunk of bread, a tin mug. "Eat," he said, voice rough like stones. She hesitated, her fingers trembling before taking it. It tasted dry, but real, like something meant for the living. After a few bites, she whispered without looking up, "You could have turned me in." He wiped his hands on his shirt and said, "I could have, but I didn't." She frowned. "Why?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because you didn't ask for help. You just needed a place to stop running." The words settled heavily between them. Neither spoke for a while. Outside, the wind pushed sand against the walls like a dry rain. She finally stood still unsteady. Her eyes darted to the open door, to the vast wasteland waiting beyond. Freedom or fear, same thing really. She took 2 steps toward the door, then froze. Her gaze landed on a shotgun hanging on the wall. Old but polished. Loaded, maybe. Her pulse raced. Was this kindness genuine or another trap dressed in decency? He noticed her stare. "Take it if you want," he said quietly. "Shoot me if it helps you rest easier." She blinked, unsure if he meant it. No one had ever given her that kind of choice before. Her throat tightened, and she turned away. "I don't want to shoot anyone," she murmured. He shrugged. "Then don't." That night, Eleanor lay awake on the straw. Through the cracks in the wall, she saw the moon, silver, far, like something watching over them both. Every time the wind shook the door, she startled, waiting for footsteps, for voices, for the past to find her again. But all she heard was the slow, steady breathing of a man on the porch outside. He stayed there all night, just sitting, just listening to the wasteland breathe. By morning, the question burned in her chest, stronger than hunger. Who was this man who could be so calm with a stranger in his shed? And what was he hiding behind those quiet eyes? Morning came slow and quiet. The wasteland stretched wide and golden, the kind of morning that seemed peaceful from a distance, but burned like truth up close. Marcus poured coffee into a tin mug, set it beside the shed door. Eleanor was already awake, sitting by the wall, eyes red from another sleepless night. He said only one word, coffee. She looked at the steam rising and whispered, "Thank you." Her voice still carried the sound of someone who'd learned to whisper, even when no one listened. When she stepped outside, the sunlight hit her face, and for a moment she forgot to be afraid. A faint smile almost formed, but then she saw them. 3 men on horseback, standing by the fence, watching. Not lawmen this time, just locals, but the kind who loved trouble more than peace. One spat into the dirt and said loudly, "Guess the old farmer likes his guests young and strange." Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't reply. He just stared until they turned their horses and rode off. But their parting glance lingered, heavier than dust. Eleanor clenched her fists. "They hate me." Marcus took a slow sip of coffee. "They hate what they don't know." She let out a weary laugh. "Then they must hate a lot." He almost smiled at that. By noon, Sheriff Amos arrived. Boots polished, hat too clean for honest work. He leaned on the doorframe and said, "Heard you got a visitor, Marcus. A pretty one, too." Marcus didn't answer. The sheriff's eyes slid to Eleanor. "You know the law says she can't stay here." Marcus met his gaze. "I know the law says a man's home is his own." The tension thickened like midday heat. Finally, the sheriff smirked. "You always did like pushing boundaries. Don't let this one ruin you." Then he tipped his hat and left. The silence that followed, it was louder than gunfire. That evening, Elena sat on the porch steps, watching the horizon swallow the sun. She spoke without turning. "They won't stop, will they?" Marcus answered softly, "No, but neither will you." Her lips curved into the smallest smile. For the first time, she believed it. In that quiet moment, something shifted between them. Not love yet, but the start of something that might outlast the wasteland. So take a deep breath. Grab a mug of coffee, or maybe a glass of bourbon, if that's your thing. Tell me, what time is it where you are? And where in this wide world are you reading from? If you're still here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how this story unfolds. Because what happens next, it'll test both their hearts and the whole town's mercy. Night fell fast that day, heavy and dry. The air smelled of rain that never arrived. Marcus sat by the fire, sharpening a blade, the kind of habit men keep when they sense trouble coming. Elena was inside the shed, trying to mend a torn sleeve by lamplight. The flame flickered with every gust through the cracks. Out in the dark, a horse whinnied, then another, then boots on gravel. Marcus's head lifted. He didn't move, just listened, counting the steps. 3 men, maybe 4. Too light for ranchers, too bold for passers-by. The door creaked open, and a voice slurred through the night. "Well, look what the old man's hiding." It was one of the men from the fence, drunk on liquor and spite. The others laughed behind him. Marcus stood, blade still in hand. "I told you to stay off my land." They stepped closer, boots crunching on dry earth. "You don't own the girl, Marcus. She's worth plenty to the right folks." Before Marcus could respond, Elena emerged from the shed, clutching the old shotgun. Her hands shook, but her eyes were steady. "I'm not for sale," she said quietly. The lead man grinned. "Darling, you don't even belong here." He grabbed her arm. In an instant, the shotgun's butt cracked into his face. Blood spilled. He stumbled back, cursing, and the others lunged. Marcus swung first, his fist catching one in the jaw. Pain flared through his arm, but he kept fighting, raw, fierce. Elena screamed, fired a warning shot into the sky. The sound, it cut through the night like lightning. The horses, spooked, bolted. The men retreated, muttering threats as they dragged their bleeding friend away. They left only because the gunshot would draw eyes from the town. Silence returned, broken only by Marcus's heavy breathing. He leaned on the fence, blood on his brow, dust in his hair. Elena dropped the shotgun and ran to him. Why did you fight for me?" she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment. "Because I'm done watching good people get hurt for no damn reason." The wind rose, carrying the scent of rain and gunpowder. They stood in the half-light, two people with nothing left to lose but each other. In that silence, trust, it began to root. But the wasteland keeps its own secrets, and the night, it wasn't done with them yet. Because while they thought the danger had passed, a darker shadow still waited beyond the hill. Morning rose slow and golden after a long night of quiet. The storm had passed. The ground still smelled of gunpowder and damp earth. Marcus stood by the porch, one arm bandaged, looking out over the land that had seen too much. Behind him, Elena stepped outside, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Her face was calm, softer than ever before. She handed him one, without a word. They stood there, watching the sun climb over the hill. No lawmen, no strangers, no running, just the sound of wind through brittle grass. Marcus spoke first. "You can leave today, if you want. The road's clear now." She didn't answer right away. She looked to the horizon, then down at her scarred hands. "I've been running my whole life, from people, from pain, from myself. Maybe it's time I stop." He looked at her and smiled. "Then stay." It wasn't a command. It was an offer. For peace, for a fresh start, for something simple and quiet that might finally mend what the world had broken. Weeks passed. Elena helped mend fences, learned to harness horses, and sometimes she laughed without stopping herself. The townsfolk still muttered, but their words, they no longer held weight. Out here, in the open land, judgment had nowhere to hide. One evening, she asked softly, "Do you ever regret helping me?" Marcus took a long breath. "Regret? No. We don't get many chances to do something right in this world. When one comes, you take it." He turned to her, eyes steady. "You saved me too, Elena. You just don't know it yet." The last light of the day spilled over the fields, painting everything golden. 2 people who began as strangers now stood side by side, not because fate demanded it, but because kindness, it built something stronger than fear. And maybe that's the lesson tucked away in this quiet tale, that sometimes one act of compassion can change a life, that love, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stays. So, before you go, let me ask, when was the last time you paused long enough to see someone who needed a bit of kindness? And what if that one small act could change everything? If this story stirred something in you, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who could use a spark of hope today. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to catch the next story from the wild heart of the West. Now, pour yourself another cup of coffee.